Hello and welcome to Finextra TV. We're here at Money 2020 in Amsterdam, and we're at the TerraPay stand with Sane, Chief Business Officer and co-founder of TerraPay. Annie, thank you so much for inviting us to your stand.
Oh, welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you out here.
Thank you very much. And I've got a lot I want to cover with you today, because I know it's a really big Money 2020 for you as you enter the next phase of growth at TerraPay, which I'm looking forward to talking to you about. But first, I want to talk about your panel session that you're going to be speaking on tomorrow and hearing about what the key points you're hoping to make are. So let's start there.
So I think, tomorrow the session is going to be interesting, and I think we're coming from a thought leadership perspective. We've always done that in the past, and I think for us, we've been advocating this for a while now about when everyone speaks about cross-border payments, everyone comes in from a perspective of how you can solve situations through technology. Absolutely, technology is one of the pillars on how you can solve for future. But I think one of the underlying challenges, which we've seen and we continuously advocating right when we incepted the company, was to look at regulations and compliance. So I am going to speak a lot about that in terms of how the world is interesting these days. How do you want to not look at regulation, compliance, and get into situations? So to me, if you look at the last 6 months, for example, in the financial services industry, there have been the biggest companies out there, had to fail. And they didn't fail because they had bad technology. They failed because they didn't have a great governance model. Right. I want to talk about it because in the eventuality of how we look at fast forward the space in the next 5 to 10 years, technologies can come and go. Regulatory positions and compliance will be on the forefront. So I will be speaking a lot about it in a more precise way in terms of how TerraPay is bringing that awareness across, not just certain markets, but across with regulators, with banks, with other agencies, where financial inclusion comes on the forefront, but at the expense of being 100% compliant. So yeah, that's pretty much we're going to talk about tomorrow. But yeah, it will be a more detailed session tomorrow.
Well, look, Annie, I'm really looking forward to that session, and we'll come back to it as well, because I know you want to share your outlook around the challenges in that space. But as I say, this is a very exciting time for you, because you are entering a new phase of growth. So I kind of want you to bring us up to date with your platform journey, and also what's next for TerraPay. What about that?
Okay, so this is a very two bigger questions, and I love talking about it, because I think for us it's always a journey which is extremely important, and if you look when we co-founded this in 2015, I remember we looked at a couple of things, and I said, what is the next project, right? And we looked at and saying, from a financial services perspective, we looked at the telecom industry and said, hey, listen, if an SMS can be sent to anyone in the world without having to worry about, is it night, is it day, is it a Sunday, it's a bank holiday, you're sending the SMS. Why can't you send money that way? So that was one important piece of anecdote for us in terms of how to build the next something. The second one was we decided we will be, whatever we do, we will only be digital. So we will not touch cash on our platform. And I remember a lot of friends out here, and in 2015 I went to the same friends, asked them about how can you make it digital, and they said, you're looking at the pipe on the wrong side. It's like by just hitting the digital transactions, you're looking at a very small market, because at that particular point of time, talking about 2014 and 15, cross-border payments were still done with a lot of cash. Yeah. So that was another piece, and we said we will only be digital. The third element which we looked at was we will never be a consumer-facing brand, because we as a founders had no experience on a consumer-facing product. So we didn't want to do anything which we haven't done. So we had always built something which was at the back end, and it ran really, really, really well. So we wanted to be an infrastructure, but at the back, not being a consumer-facing brand. And finally, and as we started building this, building the technology, building, speaking to a lot of people, we also spoke to a lot of regulators, and we spoke to a lot of bankers, and everybody came and said, listen, it was an advice which was well received by us, was if we really want to become the biggest player in this space, you need to take compliance and regulations very, very seriously. We took it to heart. We said, as we build our technology in-house, we start seeking regulatory licenses and approvals as we go along. Yeah. So what has happened? Fast track 8 years. Now everybody talks about digital now. Yeah. But we were the pioneers when we started off that. Yeah. So that's one. But then what we did was, this infrastructure which we talk about now, today we are licensed as a financial services company by the banking regulator in 27 countries.
Wow.
Yeah. I can assure you, if you go around the Money 2020 here, there will not be one company, not even the largest bank out here, who would be regulatory licensed in 27 countries. Wow. It has to be the largest banks out there, and they're not here, for example. So the fact is, we are at that level.
Wow.
We will be 30 licenses by Q1 of next year when we add other 3 countries. So our appetite continuously is to kind of get to more licenses, because that infrastructure differentiates us from everyone out here.
Sure. Look, there's no doubt TerraPay has come a long, long way, and thank you so much for bringing us up to date
so
as well.
that is what we continue to, sorry to just close on that. So that is what we see as our position on being able to see where we started, and we continuously want to grow. So we will add new products, we'll add new services, but I think the underlying position is going to be that infrastructure of technology, but backed up by compliance and regulations. Thank you.
Sure. Well, as I say, you have come a long way, and I know that you've also had a big play in the mobile wallet space, which is where I want to go next. As I say, a lot to cover with you today, and I'm interested to hear how you think mobile is going to help with financial inclusion, a really big one at Money 2020, but in the cross-border payments world. So,
again, mobile wallets, when you speak to Europe, when you speak in the US, there are different annotations to it. Yeah. If you go to emerging markets, that's where most people in the world live. Yeah. Be it Africa, be it Asia. What everybody forgets, I think Visa and MasterCard have woken up to that. And that's the reason I think, when we speak about an investment later on, we will speak about it. But the fact is, everybody thought to be financially literate, you needed to have a bank account and a Visa or a MasterCard. No. The world has seen in emerging markets, you could have just a mobile wallet and you can do everything what we spoke about, from paying school fees, going to a restaurant, buying insurance, buying gold, doing everything what you want with a mobile wallet. It is the most dominant financial instrument in most countries. It's not the bank accounts. You look at Africa, for example, the banking penetration is less than 40%.
Right.
Every household has got 1 or 2 or 3 mobile wallet instruments. They converge, they do everything in mobile wallets. You go, example, in Asia, it's the same thing. So what it brings on the forefront is mobile wallets is one of the key financial instruments for not just the underserved or the underbanked, but for the white collared as well. You will be very, very surprised with that. I have colleagues in Africa who basically would get their salaries in a bank account and move the entire money from the bank account to a mobile wallet.
Wow.
And use that mobile wallet because it's ease. It's habitual to use the mobile wallet rather than a bank account. So it's that kind of an, so it's not just for the blue collared or people who are, less literate on financial services, but actually people who really do everything what they do on the financial services. So what does it bring on the table? It brings on the table a very simple position is there is a set of instruments, digital assets, who need to come mainstream. Mm-hmm. That's what TerraPay has done. So what TerraPay has done is connected to so we identified this as a big opportunity. We went out and started connecting to each and every mobile wallet platform in the world. So you name the mobile wallet player, be it a bKash in Bangladesh, an M-Pesa in Kenya, a GCash in the Philippines, you look at Orange Money in West Africa, you look at Airtel in Africa, you look at MTN in Africa. These are the largest conglomerates in the world, having more consumers than bankers. And we connect to each of these platforms, and then we brought those consumers on the forefront where they can receive cross-border payments the most agile way, the most compliant way, and the most cost-effective way. So if you were to doing a bank transaction, and if you're doing a TerraPay payout transaction, the cost of that transaction is significantly lower. So everybody loves that, with the position being agile, being 100% compliant, and being able to bring financial inclusion in this space. So one of the reasons why the IFC, who is a part of our investment, the IFC is part of the World Bank, and they're not a financial investor. They are an investor for sustainable development goals, and they invested into TerraPay because they found TerraPay as an organization who is not just bringing financial inclusion in emerging markets, but also bringing the cost of transaction much more affordable than what you have today, which means more consumers can avail. People don't have to stack money under their pillow so that they're affording to send the money. They can send $10, $5 as well. They don't want to wait for $100 to be stacked up and then they can send.
Sure.
So that's financial inclusion to me. And that is what we are driving, will continue to drive it, where we are able to say, listen, the size of the transaction doesn't matter. You could send a $10 million transaction, you could do a $10 transaction as well, and still you can afford it. That is what the infrastructure which we are building, and we continue to build.
Wonderful. Well, Annie, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there. As you say, it's such an exciting space that holds so much potential as well. But look, I want to come back to your panel session tomorrow as well, because I think you wanted to touch on some of those big challenges that need to be overcome to reach this borderless, cross-border payments world as well. So what are some of those challenges, and how do you think we can begin to face them?
So, if you see, we looked at person-to-person transactions, small value, and brought finesse to it in terms of, being able to deliver the transaction within 1 minute, Sunday or a Saturday or whatever bank holiday, we did that. Bring down the cost of transaction. So we now start looking at how can we build the same infrastructure for SMEs. Yeah, because again, they are extremely important, participants to the whole economy. So how can you now build the same value to the SME sector, which means how can we process the business-to-business transactions more efficiently? So we're build a solution, that's what we're replicating. So we've seen success with P2P. I think we are the number one out there. What you want to now do is to build the same kind of position for a business-to-business transaction. We also looked at certain of the corporates and said, listen, from a CFO perspective, liquidity, and what's happening now with the markets, right? The cost of funds is so much gone higher, which means the more liquidity you require, the more expensive your transaction is. How can we make liquidity positions much more efficient, cheaper for the CFOs of the world? So for example, if a corporate wants to pay a merchant somewhere, and if it's the liquidity requirements for 5 days, how can I bring down to 3 days? Which means he's saving on the 2 days of liquidity. To me, it is a very, very important position, and these markets are going to be choppy all the time, which means at some point of time they're going to go back and come back in terms of cost of funds. It's what brings the cost of transaction higher again, because your cost of funds are higher. So for us, we're looking at again new solutions for businesses to be able to have a lower liquidity requirements. Again, that's a big problem today. You speak to any CFO in this world, he'll talk about the liquidity problems. We're going to solve for it, and we have a solution for it. We already implemented for a number of partners. So that again is something which is, to me, very close to us in terms of how can this infrastructure help bring down that cost, and still make it efficient, make it transparent, make it completely compliant. That's what it is, how I see it. And then the last piece on which we want to continue to build our network is to see how we are very good on the payout side. We're probably the best out there. We're probably the biggest out there in terms of payout side of it. We want to come on the pay-in side of it as well. Okay, and say again, how can you have one partnership where you're able to do a pay-in and a payout?
Well, Annie, I know these are points you're going to be covering in your session tomorrow. So again, really looking forward to that. And thank you so much for going into so much detail there and sharing your insights. But we'll leave it there. I'll let you get back to the busy Money 2020. But thank you so much for your time.
Much appreciated. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you.